have 5 council members present. We need 5 more for a quorum, and that's all we're going to have today. When I get about 1 more in the room, we're going to start the presentations. But I want all of you who are being recognized to have a reasonable audience for it. can have, I wish it were order in the court, order in the council chamber. This being Friday, it is the day that we set aside some time to recognize people who are important to us, and so I am going to begin by recognizing Councilmember Mizikowski for a presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Council, I know that you all work very hard on selecting people to join your staffs, and we all know that members of the Council staff are very, very important to each of us. But we have another auxiliary arm of folks who work in the City Legislative Analyst Office who really in many ways act as an extension for the Council as Council staff members. And one of them is retiring today. That is Ted Rogers, who I know doesn't need any introduction around this room. But Ted is retiring after 28 years in the city's service. And that's actually one of the longest tenures ever in the City Legislative Analyst Office. Ted has been exemplary in his service and has done some very, very important things for the city. I was part of the city long enough ago when we first started getting major infusion of federal grants, block grants and all other kinds of grants. And in the first days that this was being handled in the early 70s, it was quite chaotic. It was all in the office of the mayor. It wasn't clear what we were supposed to do, how we were supposed to turn it around, how we evaluated who was getting the grants. And Ted was instrumental in the Legislative Analyst Office in helping to establish order to that process, writing an ordinance, writing rules and policies by which the city still today governs and effectively judges and measures who is eligible to get grants and that they are being executed in a good manner, proper manner, and that the federal funds are going through and to worthwhile city programs. And we can thank Ted for a lot of that work. In addition, Ted probably has another record here. He probably has single-handedly written more council motions than anyone else in the history of the city. A lot of that has to do with all of these special events that we sort of routinely bring in every day, very smoothly, without a sense of an effort. Ted is the person who makes it look smooth, who puts in all the effort, and makes sure that each council office understands what needs to be done, that the motion is written in a way that the services are provided to our community events and community groups, and it's just, as I say, flawless and smooth, and that's thanks to Ted. So I'm not sure what Ron Deaton's going to do in your absence, but Ted has been very, very effective, having joined the city in 1973, moved very quickly up the ranks to a senior position in the Legislative Analyst Office, came to us actually from the state of California, and came to the state of California after a stint in the U.S. Navy, having served in Vietnam. So he has been an incredible asset here, and as I said, is sort of an auxiliary to each of us as an extra arm, an extra staff person who we can turn to help make us look good and make things flow smoothly. So Ted, on the occasion of your retirement, I think it's appropriate to bring you up here. That's not mentioning anything about all the good cheer, the smiles, in times of chaos around here. Ted is always someone you can look to help make it seem a little calmer and make light of it, make fun of it, which I think we all deserve from time to time. But on the occasion of your retirement, I want to congratulate you and wish you all the best in a lot of good endeavors that I know are going to be part of your future.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's find out what Deaton's going to do in Ted's absence.
No, just a couple things. One, working with Ted for all these years has been very rewarding, a very good employee, but I think his sense of humor and his willingness to get the job done in spite of the pressures has always been fine and exemplary as an employee. I was just reminded that the chair of the committee that on the grants committee at that time was John Gibson when Ted joined the city administrative the city's legislative analyst office. And at that point in time, I was in the city administrative office, by the way. Richard Nixon was president, and Paul Gerard was 3 years old, as I mentioned yesterday at lunch. But Ted has been a great employee, and as I said, I think his attitude has been one that should be duplicated by all of us in the day-to-day. And to the extent that that you might think I look good here on certain days, it's employees like Ted, and when I screw it up, it's been my own fault, not theirs. But best of your retirement, for your retirement, Ted.
Okay, you've waited all these years for this opportunity. Go for it.
Thank you very much for the kind words, Councilwoman Misakowski, or as Ms. as we used to call you. Madam President, members, 28 years in the CLA office, never a dull moment in that office for sure. There's always something going on. But it's time for me to move along into a different direction. I wish the best to all of you, and thank you very much.
Very few words today.
Good luck, Ted. Have a good time. All right, the chair recognizes Ms. Chick for a presentation.
Colleagues, today it's my great pleasure to honor, well, it would be the men and women in blue that serve us, but today it's men in blue, both LAPD, West Valley Division, and our school police. And it's always an honor to recognize the work of our outstanding police officers. I've asked them to join me today to salute their quick action, their thoughtful action, and quick arrests of suspects following a shooting, an isolated incident, but the kind that strikes fear into the heart of our students, their parents, teachers, and the residents that live around our schools. This incident occurred last week at Cleveland High School in Reseda. On February 8th, at the end of school, as classes were letting out, LAUSD officer Shane Stewart saw a group of young men fighting just outside the campus. Hundreds of students were in the area, and across the street are homes and their residents. As Officer Stewart approached to intervene, one of the men who was fighting produced a gun and began firing, hitting a student. Stewart drew his own gun, but wisely and courageously held his fire out of concern that students and residents could easily be caught in a crossfire. And so he charged straight at the shooter, who fled. School officers responded immediately to the scene, and LAPD West Valley Patrol and gang unit officers began combing the area immediately for suspects. Within minutes, 2 suspects, including the shooter, had been captured and arrested, and within a few hours, a third was apprehended. A 4th suspect was caught a few days later. All suspects are gang members, and all are facing charges of attempted murder. The young man who was shot was treated at a hospital and released. Thanks to these brave and dedicated officers, both LAPD and LAUSD, safety and order were quickly restored to the school and to the community, and 4 dangerous gang members were swiftly taken off the streets. We owe these outstanding officers our gratitude, our appreciation, and our recognition. Today, being honored from LAUSD Police, representing Chief Wesley Mitchell, Lieutenant Stephen Dotson, maybe if you'd raise your hand or something so we know who you are, Sergeant Robert Kahlberg, Officer Shane Stewart, who some of you might recognize from his picture in the LA Times, Officer Fred Edwards, Officer Chris Stevens. And from LAPD West Valley, near and dear to my heart and my district, from their patrol and gang unit, Commanding West Valley Division Captain William Sutton, Sergeant Shannon Allen, Detective Larry Bircher, Detective David Zabo, Officers Terry Webb, Randolph Modrell, Raphael Ferrer. I said I was going to say that wrong. Karapet Chilingarian, Estislano Rosales, Thomas Gary, and Robert Nakamura. I will present the commendation certificates to all of these officers when we go in back for photographs, but I would like to give their commanding officers a chance to say a few words to us. They don't always or often get the opportunity to be recognized as they are today. Lieutenant Dotson, on behalf of the school police, who told me he didn't want to speak, but I'm cornering him anyway.
Yes, ma'am. On behalf of Chief Mitchell and the officers of the Los Angeles Unified School District's Police Department, I want to thank the City Council and Councilwoman Chick for our recognition awarded here today. Thank you very much.
And especially our school police often go unnoticed, so I'm very pleased to be able to highlight them today. And Captain Sutton?
Thank you, Councilmember Chick. We'd like to thank the council for giving the recognition to our men and women here for the fine job they did out at the scene. I responded to the crime scene after the smoke had cleared, and it was quite a chaotic sight out there. And this was truly a collaborative effort between the school police and the Los Angeles Police Department, between patrol forces and our detective personnel. And the end result, as the council member mentioned, is that we have 4 violent gang members in custody for attempt murder, and our schools and our city are a much safer place. So thank you very much.
Well said. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Mr. Clerk, I do believe we have a quorum, so would you please call the roll?
Burton, Chick, Fiore, Galander, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Fornish, Wax, Walters, Ferraro, 10 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I do believe we have some further presentations, but before we proceed with the presentations, I believe Councilman Pacheco has an introduction.
Mr. President, colleagues, as you know, the Mexican presidential elections brought in a new party and a different vision with Vicente Fox, and part of that vision was to break new ground by bringing a new ambassador to the city of Los Angeles. So I wanted to bring Martha Irene Lara up and introduce her to you and give you a little background on who she is. So let me bring her up right now. This is our new ambassador, Ambassador Lara. Ambassador Lara is a career diplomat who took office as Consul General of Mexico here in Los Angeles on February 1st. She was elected federal senator for the state of Chihuahua. She served her full term from 1994 to 2000. She was also vice president of the Latin American Parliament from 1996 to 2000. Within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she has held different posts since 1971 in the Department of Economic Affairs, the Undersecretariat of Foreign Relations, and the General Directorates of the United Nations, specialized organizations, and international organizations. Her diplomatic experience abroad includes posts as Consul of Mexico in Laredo, Houston, and in El Paso, Texas, in Seattle, Washington, and in Miami, Florida. She has also held the position of Deputy Mexican Representative before the Women's Interior American Commission of the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C. She has been granted the award of Woman of the Year by the Professional and Business Women Club of Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua. She was decorated with the Paul Harris Medal by Rotary International and received the award International Woman by the International Federation of Professional and Business Women. She has also received 24 different awards from the state of Chihuahua. Ambassador Lara is a regular contributor to the editorial section of El Heraldo de Chihuahua newspaper. She is the author of the book Chihuahua, An Experience, a testimony of political transition of power at the state level. Ambassador Martha Lara holds a bachelor's degree in literature and modern language from the University of Our Lady of the Lake in San Antonio, Texas, graduate studies on international trade from the University of Texas at Laredo, and diplomats in diplomatic sciences, training and research, and structure and operation of the Organization of American States from the Women's University of Mexico the United Nations Institute, and the Organization of American States, respectively. Marta Lara was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. She is married to engineer Pedro Sarkis and has 2 children, Humberto and Patricia, and it is with great honor and pleasure that I introduce our new ambassador for us here in Los Angeles, Ambassador Marta Irene Lara.
Señor presidente del concilio, destacados miembros del mismo. Mr. President and council members, es un honor para mí y un placer estar con ustedes esta mañana. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be with you this morning, particularmente pensando que en San Cristóbal, Guanajuato, al mismo tiempo se están reuniendo nuestros 2 presidentes, especially when we consider at the same time in San Cristóbal Ranch in Mexico, our 2 presidents are meeting. Para nosotros en México, for us in Mexico, la vieja tradición del municipio español, the old traditional Spanish concept of municipio, city government, conlleva algo muy interesante, holds something particularly interesting. Se dice en México, it is said in Mexico, que el gobierno municipal, the city government, es el que está más cerca de su pueblo, is the one that is the closest to its people. Responde a sus necesidades, it responds to its needs, trata de concretar sus sueños y sus anhelos, it tries to make reality its dreams and aspirations, y resuelve cotidianamente los problemas que se le presentan. And every single day it tries to solve the problems which arise in the city. Nosotros les deseamos a ustedes mucha suerte en su loable labor. We wish you the best of luck in your delicate work. Y les ofrecemos la colaboración del Consulado General de México. We offer you the cooperation of our Consulate General en cualquier labor, in any task que sea en beneficio de esta comunidad, in the benefit of this community. Muchísimas gracias por su hospitalidad. Estoy encantada de estar aquí. Thank you for your hospitality. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
For about 10 seconds there, I was worried who was going to have to do the translating. And I was like, oh my God, I have to translate. Obviously, I'm going to walk the ambassador around the horseshoe, introduce her to everyone, but really, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to a great working relationship with your office and our offices here. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Council President Pro Tem Galanter for a presentation.
Okay, bring the crew up. Come on, Mary. Bring everybody up. Mary in front. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, it is my very great pleasure, as it always is when I have a chance to do this particular number with Mary Thompson, to introduce to you one of the real treasures of Los Angeles. Mary Thompson and her family have lived in Playa del Rey for over 50 years, and during a good part of that time, Mary has managed to combine being a truly splendid artist. I am the proud owner of one of the works. The Friends of Bayona once gave me an award, and they gave me the really right kind of award. I have a Mary Thompson piece of artwork in my dining room, which I love. Mary, in addition to doing really creative and wonderful art in a number of media, has been the literal worker of the Friends of Bayona wetlands and our efforts to restore the Bayona wetlands, not just save them, but restore them. She has coordinated volunteer programs for a long time now, and has put in over, what do we say, 40,000? 4,000. A lot of thousands. Probably 40,000. 40,000 volunteer hours pulling ice plant. Now, she doesn't do all the pulling of the ice plant. She coordinates the volunteers, but you know, somebody has to manage this show. She coordinates the volunteers. She talks to young people who want to come out and see what wetlands ought not to be allowed to become. And she has been our ambassador to generations of school children and their teachers, because we have to also teach the teachers about these things. She's also been a friend to, not only to me, but to a lot of people in the community. And so we have here this morning a few of her friends. We figured 40,000 was a little too big for the council chamber. The fire department would get mad. But I wanted to take the opportunity to have all of us recognize and thank Mary for her years of hard work. And it's not just hard work, it's hard work with results, which is, of course, the best kind. Now, one of the things, this has nothing to do with this morning's presentation, but Mary is nearly always adorned with turquoise jewelry. And I want you to take note that Julie's wearing turquoise. I see some other turquoise here. I'm wearing turquoise. When we honor Mary Thompson, we really mean it. So we are joined here. I'm going to let you talk, but not yet. There's unfortunately an array of people here who all have something to say about you. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mary's husband. Would you at least come up here and share this? Because she wouldn't get to do all this stuff if he weren't there helping her and making sure that there was somebody to come home to and talk about how rotten Ice Plant is. You want to know about Ice Plant, talk to all of us. We also have representatives of different community groups in Playa del Rey and elsewhere. Jesus, how did all you guys sneak in? I don't think we're going to let you all talk. We have to be a little bit selective here. But we are all here because not only do we admire Mary and the artwork she produces and the volunteer spirit that she produces, to say nothing of the work, but because we love her. And so, you can't think about this. Now, you all have many, many constituents, and I know that you all like and respect all your constituents, but you don't love them all. And Mary is one of the ones that for me, has been a real treasure. One of the things that I think about when I think, those days when you say, why do I do this job? This is one of the reasons I do this job. So I do have a resolution from a whole batch of us here to present to you, but not until actually, I'll give it to you. You can hold on to it while all these other people talk instead of me. But I do want to, before we quit, I do want to let a couple of people from the various involvements that Mary has say a couple of words, starting with Ruth Lansford of Friends of Ballona Wetlands.
Yes, I'm Ruth Lansford from Friends of Ballona Wetlands, and I do want to thank, on behalf of the Friends, the City Council for this honor to Mary, not only for her work, but her extraordinary talent and her wonderful, wonderful ability to communicate with children and teach them what the value of wetlands is. We've always appreciated her in the Friends, we've always appreciated her in Playa del Rey, and now the whole city appreciates her, and that gives us a great deal of satisfaction. Thank you very much.
Okay. Julie? Short.
The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that connects us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He is but a strand of it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. I've been fortunate enough to have been a strand of Mary's life for the last 20 years. Mary Thompson has unselfishly dedicated her life and her art to educating and protecting the Ballona wetlands. Since meeting her over 20 years ago, both my daughters have been out there side by side with her, pulling the ice plant with Mary and their classmates. As a fellow environmentalist and artist, I have learned a great deal from Mary. If not for her courage and the courage of other environmentalists like Ruth Lansford, the Honorable Ruth Galanter and her staff, and other city council members and countless volunteers, there'd be no wetlands left or parcels in the Playa Vista project to even discuss about protecting. Few people have the wisdom and the vision to know what their responsibilities are while on this planet and what they will leave behind for future generations. Mary, you know yours. And for that, we are all grateful to you for your commitment. On behalf of the Vista Del Mar Neighbors Association and the Village of Playa del Rey and my own family, thank you so much for teaching us and for never giving up.
Okay, I think it's your turn. Believe me, everybody here has something similar to say about Mary. I did leave one thing out when I was talking about this, and that is that Mary has also served as the liaison person between the Friends of Ballona Wetlands and the Gabrielino Tongva tribe, because we are hoping that one day we will get far enough with this whole project that the wetlands will be restored and we will have an interpretive center that acknowledges all of the people who've been involved in this. Sorry I forgot to say that. Now you can have the mic.
Well, not much, except that I'm not alone, and all these people and so many volunteers have done the work, and I'm very proud to be representing all those people. And I also want to thank, again, my dear husband of 53 years, Carson, whose support has made this possible, that I was able to do all the things that I wanted to do. Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, we're going to go around the back.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilman Hernandez, did you have an introduction this morning? Not here as of yet? Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Holden for a presentation.
Congratulations. Hi, how you doing? Storm for engineering. Right. Good morning. How you doing? Good to see you. Bet. Mr. President, members, today, as we have done in the past years, the Los Angeles City Council is officially commemorating National Engineers Week. This is the 50th anniversary. I have a council resolution to present to several leaders from the engineering profession joining us here this morning. I'd like to recognize Stan Sysak, representing the Institute for the Advancement of Engineering. The Institute promotes engineering profession and encourages young students to become engineers and scientists, and that's what we need. Mrs. Lisa Rad, who's president of the Los Angeles Council of Engineering and Scientists. I would also like to recognize our city engineer, Mr. Vitaly Troyan, Mr. Andrew Edelman, our general manager of the Building and Safety Department. Working with the mayor's program of Operation Healthy Neighborhoods, I would like to acknowledge and congratulate the Bureau of Engineering for reaching out to underserved communities during this week of providing opportunities for high school students to be exposed to engineering in this year of the bridge building contest. After I read the resolution, Mr. Troyan and Mr. Edelman will say a few words. And in the resolution, Mr. President, members, whereas the engineering organizations throughout California have designated this week of February 18th through the 25th as National Engineers Week, whereas Los Angeles in particular is recognized as a world center of engineering activities and accomplishments, and whereas services performed by engineering continue to be important elements of the physical integrity, quality of life, and the orderly development of the city of Los Angeles, making contributions to health, safety, and well-being of its citizens. And whereas the theme of the Millennium celebration of National Engineering Week is turning ideas into realities. Whereas the Institute of the Advancement of Engineering is selecting the Engineer of the Year and presenting project achievement awards during this engineering week. Now therefore be resolved by the adoption of this resolution the mayor and the Los Angeles City Council designates February 18 through 25, 2001 as the National Engineers Week in the city of Los Angeles. And may I have the envelope, please? Okay. And of course, we'll have Mr. Edelman and Sysak and all the others accepted this Engineering Week's resolution from the mayor, you know. Are they all gathered around? All right, here they are. Okay, so you decide. Oh, okay.
Once again, as Mr. Holden mentioned, every year we are recognized by the City Council for this. I'm the immediate past president of the Institute for the Advancement of Engineering, and I just want to thank the council for recognizing us, and we appreciate having this on display at our annual banquet where we give our awards. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, this is a great time to be an engineer in the city of Los Angeles. The voters have approved almost $2 billion worth of projects. We're rebuilding libraries, we're rebuilding City Hall, we're rebuilding fire stations, we're rebuilding animal care facilities. As I said, a great time. So today we bring to you two people that we'd like you to introduce to you. The first one is Ophelia Rubio. Ophelia? Ophelia is new to our organization. She's only joined us for the last couple of years, and we put her in charge of fixing the ocean outfall. The design was done so quickly, and the construction has already been completed, that the project was accomplished before most people even understood that there was a problem. So we're very pleased to honor her as one of our outstanding young engineers of the year. And at the other extreme, I'd like to introduce Clark Robbins. Clark has been with the Bureau of Engineering. Clark has been with the Bureau of Engineering for over 30 years. His work on restoring the bridges of Los Angeles to its original condition have been recognized to the extent that the National Archives have shown up, done a research project on it, and the documentation of those bridges is in the National Archives. And then spanning from the 20th century to the 21st century, Clark is now in charge of making sure that most of our permits are issued over the internet, so that people don't have to drive to come to our offices to pick up permits. So the transition from the bridges of the past to the bridges of the future is something we wish to recognize and honor today. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to call your attention to a couple of recent headlines in the newspaper. There was a major earthquake in India. Some 20 to 30,000 people there lost their life. A similar major earthquake in El Salvador, 20 to 30,000 people lost their lives. Contrast that, when there's a major earthquake in Los Angeles, we only lose 20 to 30 people. When you compare 20 to 30 versus 20 to 30,000, the difference is the engineers and the inspectors. And that is what the significance of the work that day in, day out, the engineers who are represented by my colleagues behind me come to the focus. We are in the business of saving lives, providing safe buildings, safe bridges, safe roads, and we appreciate your day in, day out support, because our work doesn't come into focus until there's a major event. And then we are all grateful that we have taken those proper safety measures. Thank you for your support.
Well, engineers have made our community safe and safer from earthquakes and all. And so, as already been said, this is a great time to be an engineer in the city of Los Angeles. And I would add to that, it's a great time to be an engineer in the city of Los Angeles and a city council member. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holden, and all of you. All right, the chair recognizes Ms. Chick for another presentation.
Folks, let's go back and get some pictures.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask two very, very special people in my life to come up to the podium. My mom and dad. They thought they were just coming to have lunch with me later today and also to finally see the council chambers here, because the last time they visited me, we were in what I call the real city hall that I don't get to move back into as a council member. So it seemed more than time to ask them to come and visit me here today and to take the opportunity to slightly belatedly and publicly celebrate my father's 90th birthday. And I'll bring my mom down in about 4 years to do the same for her. We did have a big family celebration, and all the relatives came from the East Coast, closer to his birthday, which was January 4th. But he's getting emotional, and now you know why I get teary-eyed. Happiness is, Dad, making it to 90 years old, healthy, wealthy, and wise, from your loving daughter, Councilmember Chick. There you go. You want to say anything? I've just asked him if he wants to say anything, and I hope he doesn't say what he just whispered to me.
I just want to thank Mayor Reardon for allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Mr. Hernandez, do you have an introduction? No. They're not here?
One introducer is not here at this time.
Okay, later. All right, I believe we are ready to begin the regular council business. First item.
Approval of the minutes.
We're going to approve the minutes while the hilarity comes. Nobody has reduced this chamber to that much laughter in quite a long time. All right, the minutes are approved. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
The commendatory resolutions are approved. for that.
Before starting the regular agenda, item number 18, a request that matter be continued as a closed session item.
All right, item 18
Until
is going
March
to be...
2nd.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know, until March 2nd, also a Friday. Okay. Next.
Items number 1 through 5 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have been held. A motion is required on item number 3, and as mentioned, there's 2 on one file.
All right. All right, Mr. Fewer has moved the budget report on item 3. Do we have any specials 1 through 5? Okay. We do have some cards on items 5 and 6. People have listed themselves as wanting to speak on both of those. We've had a public hearing on 5, so unless I hear a motion to open the public hearing on 5, I don't hear any motions. All right, we have items 1 through 5 before us.
Madam Chair, could I call for one special?
All right, item 1 is called special by Mr. Hernandez. Okay, and Ms. Mizikowski has called 5 special. Anybody else? We only have 3 to go here. Okay, open the roll on items 2, 3, and 4, and item 3, it's the Budget Committee report. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next.
Items number 6 through 17 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have not been held.
All right, well, item 6 has cards, and item 13 has a card in favor. So let's call those special. 10 special, Mr.
9 special,
Savornich.
please.
9 special, who was that? Alex, was that you? Mr. Padilla? Okay, any other specials? 6 through 17. 7,
Item 13, Madam Chair.
who said, I'm sorry, 13 is, all right, item 13, we do have a card, so we're calling that
Okay.
special anyway. Did I hear somebody say 17? Or was that a speculative? Okay, right now we have called special items 6, 9, 10, and 13. Any other specials through item 17? Okay. Open the roll. Now, a 7 is an ordinance.
That will be carried over 1 week until
All
February 23rd.
Mr. Holden, what's the problem?
16, you're asking for legislative action to take place on that part of the...
Well, you want to call that special?
Yes,
Let's just
yes,
call
I
it
think-
special. Okay. Item 16 has been called special. That leaves us items 7, 8, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 17. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, those are approved, and the ordinance on item 7 goes over 1 week. Forthwith on 15. Okay, which brings us back to...
Item number 19 is a closed session item. You wish to hold that on the
Yes,
desk?
let's hold that on the desk, and then we're back, I believe, to item 1.
To number 1, called
Okay.
Special Councilmember Hernandez.
Mr. Hernandez, you called item 1 special?
Yeah, if Mr. Penny could just come up a second and,
And then while he's doing that, would you hit the speaker button, please?
sure, got it.
Okay, go.
Mr. Penny, it was brought to my attention by my staff that one of the requests that we're approving through this ordinance is to basically eliminate the need for REAP cases to come before council before they're included. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, there have been processes established to make sure that, basically to make sure there's an appeal process that can be paid attention. To me, the goal of REAP is to make units habitable.
That's correct.
Do you want to explain to me why you don't want the council to play a role in understanding when a unit is going into REAP?
This is in addition to the regulations that your council adopted. A property owner has 2 chances to comply, to get extensions in complying with code violations. If they're 60% complete with the work, they can get a 30-day extension, second extension at 85%. If an owner is not going to comply at that point, it's pretty obvious that we need to take some type of action. This accelerates that process. We're also going to put in place hearing officers. We're working on a report that will be coming back to your council, supposed to go to the Rent Adjustment Commission on March 15th, and then enter your council for consideration in using that process. So that would be the appeals process.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with that process, but you still don't think it should go before council before it goes in REAP?
I think this process is a fair process that accelerates it. The answer is no, I do not.
Why?
I think this allows the department to deal with the property owner in a fair manner, and if they do not comply, then to put it in REAP, the property owner can appeal to the Rent Adjustment Commission.
Is there time savings that you think will happen?
Well, again, the property owner already has 2 chances to comply, to get extensions and that sort of thing.
I'm running out of time, and now, at the same time, you're not asking, you're leaving in place that it takes the council to remove it from REAP.
That's correct.
Why?
The outreach groups have indicated that are in the REAP process that they prefer to come to council. This gives the tenants a chance to provide testimony at a public hearing on the process.
Okay, so members of the council, the only reason I wanted to bring it up is I think we should have the same system both ways. If our goal is to create habitable units as soon as possible, and so we have a system that basically says council does not need to take action to put something in, but we do have a system that says council needs to take action to take something out. And I just thought the same kind of appeal process that we're adopting to put something in could apply to take something out. So I have some confusion as to why we're treating one party in this transaction different than we're treating the other party.
Well, again, on the council taking a property out of the REAP process based on public hearings and committee and council, the outreach groups, the number of tenant outreach groups indicated that they would prefer that a property have to come back to council.
Right, but don't landlords complain that the housing department listens to outreach groups more than they listen to the landlords?
I get it both ways.
Right, so I'm just trying to, what I'd like to do is, again, from my perspective, if we had the same system both ways, I don't have a problem. But I do think that we don't have the same system, and I want to bring it to everybody's attention. That's what's bothersome to me. And again, my goal has been throughout my term to make units habitable as fast as possible. And so I feel comfortable with the approach that you've established for purposes of putting a unit in, and I think the same kind of approach could be established for purposes of taking a unit out. If tenants were complaining, they should have the right to go through a hearing officer before it's released and to go to the general manager before it's released. I don't think it should have to come to the council.
Well, that could be considered, could be a motion that we consider that and bring it back to
I would like
committee
that
or-
considered as part of that provision, that we look at, how our processes might differ and how we could make them the same. That would be my motion right now. And I don't have anything wrong with the rest of it.
Okay. We do have one person who's asked to be heard. There has been a hearing on this item, and the card indicates that he is in favor of the proposal. So if I don't hear a motion, I've already explained to him, if I don't hear a motion, we don't have another hearing. But can you restate, please, your motion?
My motion would be that if it doesn't have to come to council to basically be placed in REAP, it shouldn't have to come to council to be removed from REAP, and that the system that's used to put it be the same system that's used to take it out.
All right, but are you then, this is an ordinance on second consideration. So I thought what I heard you say was that you wanted that possible modification to be
come back to
considered
us.
to come back at another time.
And I don't have a problem with that. I don't
Okay.
have a problem with that.
Okay. Mr. Fewer?
Yeah, I want to be clear. If we, just a little quieter, please. If we adopt item 1 today, as I believe is before us, including with Mr. Hernandez's input, then we allow tenants to come to the council and offer their views in advance of removing a property from REAP. The effect of Mr. Hernandez's recommendation is not to thwart our vote today, but rather to have a second vote later on if we wish to amend this ordinance before us. So we'll have another bite at that apple and have opportunity for input from everybody before we take that move. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody else? Open the roll on item 1, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That's approved forthwith on that. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item, I believe,
Item number 5, called special by Councilmember Miskowski.
Ms. Mizakowski, you called item 5 special.
Madam President, I would like to ask the city attorney to come to the table and tell us what the recommendation is in terms of the background. I know that each of us have received some of the report, which was an analysis by the city legislative analyst. And I would also like, at the same time, to be talking on item number 6, because they are related. And I think it might be appropriate to move a 5-minute public hearing. I think you indicated that there were some cards. So let's consider item 5 and 6 together and have a 5-minute public hearing.
Anybody have any problem with that? We are now going to consider items 5 and 6. You guys want to, I think we'll hold the public hearing first. All right, I am calling people in the order in which the cards happen to be in here, and I can't vouch one way or the other for how they got in this order. We'll begin with Erica Zucker, followed by Victor Naro and Fernando Chacon. Then I'll call them, and Roger Adjerkop, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Actually, I'll tell you the whole list, followed by Reverend Jeff Carr, and Joe Linton, and Lois Arkin. So, Erica Zucker.
I'm actually going to switch places with Jeff Carr since he needs to leave.
Thank you. My name is Reverend Jeff Carr. I'm the Executive Director of the Brzee Foundation, which is located in Council District 13. And I'm here this morning to speak and urge you to make an appointment of Sharon DeLugich to the vacant seat in CD 13. I've reviewed the proposal that you're suggesting for how to fill vacant council seats, and I don't think that that's a bad process. I actually think it's a good process, and it's going to be a process that I believe you're going to have to deal with more and more, as with term limits. There are going to be more and more of you that may be seeking other public offices, and if any of you decide to, as our councilwoman did, seek a public office at the state level, we are going to have this continual problem where every November we may be faced where we have a period of about 6 or 7 months where there will be council seats vacant. Presently, we have one with our councilwoman. We could have had two if Councilmember Savornich had been successful in his bid last fall. And with Councilmember Ferraro out sick presently, right now there are only 13 council members. And I believe with the new charter the way it is, it gives too much power to the mayor. With only needing 10 needing 10 votes to actually override one of his vetoes. I believe with only 13 council members and potentially less in the future, that's going to give substantial power to the mayor. And I believe it's, while the process is good, this process would essentially drag on over the next period of probably 2 months, which would eventually mean that our council district, CD13, would again be without representation for this time during what, as we've said before, is the most crucial time during the process of the city government, which is the budget process. And so I want to urge you to appoint Sharon DeLugich to actually let us have representation so that we can continue to move forward many projects in our district that are stalled
Thank you.
presently.
There's
Thank
a
you.
lot of people behind you. Mr. Naro.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Victor Naro from the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, and we stand today in support of the appointment of Sharon DeLugich as the appointed City Council member for Council District 13. My organization is a coalition of 40 or 50 organizations, many of which represent immigrant communities in Council District 13. And we feel it's so important that these different immigrant communities in this district have representation in City Council. It is unfair to deny them the representation. We understand the process, and the process is fine, but it takes such a long time, and we really think this council, city council members, you should take immediate action to appoint Sharon DeLugich to represent this district that really is representative of so many different immigrant communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chacon.
I want to start by saying good afternoon. My name is Fernando Chacon. I'm the Director of Youth Services for El Centro del Pueblo. I'm here in support of Sharon DeLugich because of one reason. She's helped El Centro in tremendous, and not only El Centro, but the community. With all her hard efforts, as I mentioned last time I was here, regarding the last meeting that was held regarding this matter, she helped the people that where the building collapsed. She was there. I didn't see any other representatives there. If I didn't, I apologize if you were there. But one of the hard stuff is that there was people that were, hurt by this incident, and Sharon was the one there. Also, Jackie was there. But not only because of Jackie am I supporting her, I'm supporting her for the great work that she's done for the community on her own efforts and on her own. She stands alone, and one of the community, as a community member and as a director of El Centro del Pueblo, I greatly support Sharon DeLugich for her position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. You'll correct me. Actually, don't correct me, just tell me.
The name is Patrick Agercup, and good morning.
Thank you. I was wrong. I apologize.
I'm here representing the Santa Monica Western neighborhood group of over 100 people. We are one of the 50 members of a coalition of council representation who demand representation in our district. For many years, with the help and support of the council office, we successfully organized in our neighborhood by getting rid of drug dealing in our street, founding a job center on Virginia Avenue, and working to get Lexington Park for our children. Our work has not stopped. We continue to strive to better our neighborhood, and we have a few projects underway. Because there is no representation, city departments are not responsive to us. We need a voice and need it immediately, not in June. No more weak and unrealistic excuses about backroom deals and cronyism. Everyone in our community wants Sharon DeLugich to be appointed. The future and well-being of our district is in your hand. Please don't delay this decision any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Zucker.
Good morning, council members. My name is Erica Zucker. I'm the policy director of the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. I'm here today as part of a coalition of over 40 groups, community groups, who are asking you to appoint someone to represent the 13th Council District. We don't understand why this is being called a backroom deal, why this is called cronyism. This is about representation. And 3 weeks ago, there were over 150 people in this room, members of the district, residents of the district, members of local community groups asking to be represented on the council. I don't want to impugn the ability or the intent of any of the council members, but none of you represent the 13th district. It's not the same as having a representative to have council members even who are helping on issues of importance to the district. With regard to the process proposed by the city legislative analyst, we don't oppose the process per se, but it should have been taken up earlier. You knew the seat was going to be vacant, the possibility that 2 seats were going to be vacant early in this year, and if the process went into effect then, the council district would be represented now. To institute a process that will take 2 or 3 months to completion doesn't get us anywhere. And then finally, I'd just like to bring up one more point. People have talked about the budget. Another issue that's going to be before the council before June is the issue of neighborhood councils. This is an important piece of legislation for the government of the city under the new charter, and none of those folks in the 13th district who are trying to form neighborhood councils are going to have any kind of direct representation. Thanks very much.
Mr. Linton.
Yeah, hi, my name is Joe Linton, representing the Parks First Coalition, the group that worked on the SNAP ordinance that I want to thank you all for approving. We found things moving well with SNAP. When we had council representative, we were able to move things forward in terms of obtaining park funding and transportation funding and land use ordinance stuff. And now we find without council representation, we're getting the short end of the deal on those things. We're not represented in discussions that are divvying up monies like Prop 12. And so we feel that our district, without a council person, is being overlooked and slighted in this whole process. So I urge you to appoint Sharon DeLucich to fill the vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Lois Arkin, and then Mary Lou Dudas, if I'm pronouncing it right. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for hearing us again today. My name is Lois Arkin. I live in the Los Angeles Eco Village about 3 miles west of here. About 500 people live in my 2-block neighborhood. I'm not suggesting that I'm speaking on behalf of all of them because I haven't polled all of them, but I'm looking at this document that came out from the Chief Legislative Analyst's office, and if we go this route, we're not going to have representation for at least 2 or 3 more months, which is when the regular election is going to happen anyway. So I would like to, I'm not sure exactly what your processes are for changing this legal ordinance way of doing things, but I would urge whatever it is that you have to do to give us the appointment we need to get the representation that we need to act very quickly and use us, let us be the guinea pigs, because as you've heard many times, this is going to keep coming up for you all. So I really urge you to use us for the guinea pigs. Let's get representation appointed as soon as possible. Sharon is the person that knows what's going on, has been following what's going on, can be our representative for the next few months, and do it quickly. We can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Lou Dudas.
Good morning. I'm a resident and an employee of the 13th District, and I'm very concerned about this constituency not being represented during the council's budget process. I know that at my home, if I invite 15 people to dinner and we're serving pork chops only 14 people show up, I know that 15th pork chop is going to be eaten. So I especially hope that the 13th is represented during that budget process. I urge this council to appoint Sharon DeLucich to represent the 13th. This is not about Jackie Goldberg extending her sphere of influence from Sacramento. She's gone. This is about a constituency of 250,000 people being unrepresented during a very important process that will affect the 13th in the coming year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That closes the public hearing, and we begin with Mr. Hernandez. Well, Mike, you're up. I'm sorry, Mike, before you start,
have that first.
she's right. She did ask for it. Go ahead, staff.
Madam President, members of the council, requested by the motion and discussed with the Rules Committee are basically what are the alternatives that the City Council has relative to a vacancy.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? We're considering both items 5 and 6. Item 5, just so everybody's clear, item 5 was the result of a committee discussion of a rather generic motion about how to deal with council vacancies. Item 6 was a motion that's been waived by committee twice to make a specific appointment in this case. Okay, go ahead.
Speaking to item number 5, our report, along with the city clerk, to the committee and to the council is that in the case of CD 13 right now, we believe there are 3 alternatives. The first is to immediately appoint someone to the remaining term. 2 is to call a special election. And 3 is to appoint the winner of the outcome of the regular election, which will either be decided in April or June of this year, to fill out the remainder of the current term. We believe, given the time we are right now, a special election is not feasible. It would not be as timely as the regular election, so really you end up with basically 2 fundamental decisions. 1 is to appoint a person immediately, and 3 is to appoint the winner of the primary or the general election in June. As requested by the committee, my office and Mr. Carey's office have also put together a process by which if you were going to appoint, if you wanted to have a different process than just appointing someone, you could follow, and that's included in the February 14th memorandum subject filing vacant council offices by appointment. But fundamentally, on the 13th district, you have 1 and 3 appoint or appoint the winner of the election.
Okay, now, Mr. Hernandez, it's now your turn.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate at this time to just introduce a motion on item 5 that the council take a direction of agreeing to appoint someone to the position of the 13th Councilmanic District?
Yes.
Okay. That is my motion to start.
Okay, so the first motion is that the council make an appointment to the 13th district.
And I'd like to
Okay.
be able to argue why.
Go ahead.
Because one, I agree that we're going to have a lot more of this activity as a council because of term limits and because of a process called reapportionment. It's going to create a lot of political activity. And so for us to stand on the previous precedent of not doing that doesn't make a lot of sense, because even today we find it questionable at times whether we can put a quorum together when one member is out on city business and another member happens to catch the flu. So our realities are we need to have a full council of 15. I need to share with people that when I first got elected to office, it took less than a year and a half for me to go to a community meeting in Pico Union at Brendo Junior High School and listen to people complain about city government, and me be able to ask them, did any of you vote for me? And not a single one voted for me. And the reason not a single one had voted for me is it wasn't part of my council district when I ran for office. When we reapportioned, we changed boundaries, and all of a sudden we're representing communities that we weren't voted to represent. And we did not run to represent, but then they became our communities. Most important, in this absence of a representative of the 13th Councilmanic District, you need to know that I believe strongly that besides the fact of fighting for resources for the district you represent, our power comes from our decision-making on land use issues. And you'll find that we have spent a lot of time debating issues in a council district that does not have representation. Whether it be a nuisance abatement issue, it be a splitting of a lot like we did in the Highland Park area of the 13th Councilmanic District, the warehousing of or public storage issue. And what was clearly absent from my perspective was a voting voice on those issues. Doesn't mean we'd have changed them, it just means that that was not there. And so it might seem like a short period of time, but it's really important that we give that voice and allow for some representation, at least while there's an election process for the people of that district to select their representative.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chick.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. As you know, I was the author of both of the motions before us. Item 6, to specifically appoint the former council member's chief of staff to fill the vacant seat on Council District 13. And item 5, because it's clear that these situations will be coming up more and more in the future, and it seemed time to have a thoughtful perusal of the options because vacancies obviously can occur for different reasons at different times in the election cycle. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution that would always be appropriate. But as I said when this item was before us the last time, it made enormous sense to me, especially in this situation, to look at what the former council member had wished in terms of representation. She had been overwhelmingly reelected to her second term. She had been recently overwhelmingly elected to be the state assembly representative for predominantly the same constituency. So clearly the voters of that district were expressing a certain amount of confidence in the decision-making of our former colleague. And it also made sense to me that a very experienced, long-term staff member who happens to have been the chief of staff was someone who was eminently qualified to be the voice and representative for a fairly short period of time for that district. And so I still take that position and am comfortable in having that motion before us, as well as the other options that can be considered as a package for future times if there's enough votes today to move forward with item 6.
Ms. Mizikowski.
I want to echo the sentiments of Mr. Hernandez and Ms. Chick. I share the concern about the vacancy in this particular seat. And I think, as Mr. Hernandez pointed out, not only in the question of allocation and tending to the normal kinds of issues, let alone what the community talked about with the emergencies coming up, but I think particularly in the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, we have seen some very significant cases, very large cases in the Council District 13, where because there has not been a person able to hold that seat right now, it's not clear what the history has been, what the impressions within the community, how things are being presented, and it has required some extra effort on the part of those of us who sit on that committee, or even yesterday when we went through a sign task force. We had received some information about the Hollywood Business Improvement District and a recommendation for a special sign district. And those are the kinds of things, the kinds of attention to detail, the kinds of issues that really are important. And I think we're seeing it more in this district than we may have seen in the past. I don't know if that is a sign of the times or not, but obviously with term limits, every day that a council person serves here is perhaps more important than in the past because they are ultimately limited. So I too had supported item 6, but I believe that what Mr. Hernandez has suggested in voting first on the council's intent and or will to appoint immediately a person to that seat today is the right motion to take first. I also think that the recommendations as put forward by the CLA in starting to address this issue and setting forth a format for how we would deal with it in the future and voting subsequently on if there's not a will immediately today to appoint, to indicate that the council's intent would be to appoint as soon as the election takes place so that we can make sure that someone does take that seat in the shortest time that the will of the council will indicate. But I think that, as I said, the appointment today And the candidate who has been named to suggest to be filling that position, I think is the right candidate. I've got to admit perhaps a bit of prejudice on that regard, having been a former chief of staff, that I know well, and you all know well, how your chiefs of staff really do reflect and represent and have a sense of what's going on in that district, a sense of how the district has been operated unto themselves. And so that's why I think this was a natural progression, a natural issue of succession, and I do hope that the council will move to affirm the recommendation today to appoint immediately.
All right, Mr. Hernandez, I just want to clarify your motion. I didn't hear the immediately in that. Was that a part of your motion? Okay. Mr. Holden is next.
Mr. President, members, everybody sitting as a member of this council to fight and scratch and scrape to get here, period. Nothing given. You give it the way you receive. Tough. Now, I don't see any difference in this district than my district. Mr. Cunningham left, I think, sometime in August and September of 1986. The CLA and the president of the council, Ms. Russell at the time, and others did an excellent job representing the 10th district. And if they dared to attempt to appoint someone, I tell you, that district would have revolted. There are a lot of political animals in the 10th, a lot of political animals in the 13th. If they thought at any time that when Ms. Goldberg left, that someone would be appointed, you'd have all kind of meetings being held in the community and saying, appoint me and appoint this one and appoint that one. The business community would have been here saying, give that person a job. But that was not the case, and there was therefore never any real fair hearing. We had a big issue in the 10th district before the election took place, Lafayette Square enclosure. They were fighting like you know what over their pros and cons, whether or not it's going to work or not work. Turns out that they put it all together and we didn't have to bite the bullet. But as soon as the general election took place in June, and June 7th, they appointed the winner. They appointed me. What did this will do to the people who are putting their names on the ballot, doing what one must do in order to be elected? Then it comes the general election and somebody would have been appointed. You would have denied them an opportunity to fill the vacancy. That's wrong. What you're attempting to do here today is wrong. Anybody want to be a council person, run for the seat. They had an opportunity before filing closing. They didn't take advantage of that. And I like the person a lot. They acted as a council person already, and we do listen to them when they come in and say, we want this and we want that. And I see nothing wrong with it. But, you know, let's not get out of step. This would be a misstep, and I can't be emotional about what sounds good and what really is good. We have to do what is right. And we should not deny those other individuals who are out there putting their names in the line and fighting and scraping to be elected. And when they win, whoever that will be in June, they should be appointed as I was appointed. And there is a provision to appoint, and that's what's before us today also. So I'm speaking against this immediate appointment and wait until the election is over and appoint the person who wins.
All right, thank you. Mr. Savornich.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the council. I think this council does have to make a statement in regards to our wanting to ensure that the 13th district has representation. I think the only argument here today is that when the majority of the council feels that that council member should be appointed, and not as a substitute, but also to put on the floor for the sake of debate and or to be considered after Mr. Hernandez's motion, I would like to move that the council also consider making the appointment for the 13th district seat immediately after a victor is clear, either after the April primary if a person gets more than 51% of the vote, or 50+1, or June, whether that person gets 51% of the vote. So I'd like to place that on the council floor also, just as a way of this council stating to the people of the 13th district that we hear you and feel that if indeed April is the day where a appointment needs to be made, once there is a clear willingness of the people to choose someone, or if that be June, that would be the time. So, Madam President, I would like to make that motion and respectfully ask for a second.
All right, Mr. Hernandez.
Speaking on Mr. Savornich's motion, which I need to understand better because I might not be supportive or I might be supportive, I think it's critical that we take into account each day that there's no representation in that district. And I know Mr. Savornich is someone who fights hard for his district, and I've known him on occasions to consider, for example, taking some of the resources of my district, and he just sees me react. And what it does is it makes the 13th vulnerable. I, as a gesture, earlier asked Mr. Deaton to have a seat in the 13th Councilmatic seat, and he promptly said he wouldn't do that. And it's because he works for all of us. But if your motion was to, and I would support it under these kinds of conditions, if we can appoint someone now with the understanding that that appointment is only to last until there's a clear victor identified, I don't have a problem with it. And when I say that, because if in the primary you have someone with 50% plus one, I would have no problem reappointing someone to fill that position if it happens in the June primary. What I am concerned about is what happens between now and that April date, or now and that June date. And so I would be willing to accept the, as a friendly amendment if that was the condition. If that's not the condition, I could not accept it, because what you're saying is, let's keep the seat vacant till April, but most likely June, knowing the number of candidates that are actually running.
Okay, let me just make sure, yes, I'm going to call on you, because we actually took up this issue of, can you replace if you make an immediate appointment, can you replace them when there's a clear victor? And so,
Mike Carey, the city clerk. Under the charter, the appointment made by the council goes to June 30th of an odd-numbered year, and there is no mechanism to undo that appointment. Obviously, anybody you appointed could, on their own, voluntarily resign at some point, but you cannot legally assure that. So any appointment you make now would run through June 30th of 2001.
But we could appoint with an agreement of resignation.
I don't know whether
can't
the
enforce it,
agreement would be enforceable.
let me just, not on your time here, let me just say my understanding of the rather careful way that Mr. Savornich presented his motion was that it was not a substitute for your motion.
Right, okay.
He just wanted it out on the table so that we would know that there was another motion in the event that your motion does not pass.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, this is not the first time Mr. Savornich and I have been on two different sides.
I know. That's the joy of the city council. You always wondered what it was, and that's it. Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President. And so now there's, I guess, 3 items before us. There's the appointment of Sharon DeLugich to fill the 13th Council District, which I'm not in support of, so for those counting votes. Second, what are our options in terms of filling that vacancy, either by appointment or by special election in a reasonable amount of time? And one of the things that I will offer for consideration, and I'm even open to going to committee for review before coming back, is not just to look at calling a special election, which we have done in this case, to coincide with the April primary and the June runoff, but in all future instances have this council go on record as a matter of policy, when we know and can anticipate that there's going to be a vacancy, to call for a special election, and it may cost us several $100,000, whatever the costs may be, but I think both sides can agree you can't put a dollar value on representation. And if that is a concern on a day-by-day basis, then several $100,000, even $1 million to ensure that 250,000 people in our city do not go without representation. I think it behooves us to begin to look down the road, because whatever we decide to do today may or may not set a precedent. But if we look at today's example as an example, then we knew that council district was going to be vacant before now Assemblymember Goldberg was sworn in Sacramento. And we could have, if we were really eager to do something about that, called for a special election in December and have avoided the months and months that have gone by. But I can't support, it's not personal to Sharon, I like her, but this process, because I think it is the right of the people who live in that council district to have them voice who they desire to be their representative. So again, I offer that additional amendment for consideration either today or to be referred to committee, but for now, let's keep it not as a substitute, but as an additional amendment for consideration. I can't support item number 5 and item number 6. Let's not just talk about it in the course of what are we going to do today in this particular instance, but what shall be the council policy from here into the future.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 is actually not specific to this instance, except that it specifically says we would not, because of the timing, we would recommend against a special election to be called now for the 13th in this instance. Otherwise, the rest of that motion is generic. Item 6 is the one that's specific to this. Mr. Deaton, you wanted to add something, and I got 2 more people so
Right,
far.
just a comment about, in all instances, calling a special election, and doing it immediately. Two things, that in this instance, the special election might have been somewhere at the most 45 days, or more likely 30 days ahead of the regular election in the first place. You would then have the additional confusion of having both a regular election, a special election for the remainder of this 2 years, the remainder of this term for a few months, and then yet another election a month or so later for the next 4 years. So there is some confusion, 1. 2, that happens to be in this particular instance when the term is ending on June 30th. If the term was, if in this instance it had been an even number council district, and there was a special election, and that special election allowed the person to take office in this fiscal year, that person would be precluded from having 2 terms, because it would be 2 years plus. It's a...
In short, it's a question of timing, of when it comes
I think I know
in short,
a
it's
little bit about
complex.
that. I know a
Okay.
little bit about that.
At least.
Okay, Mr. Pacheco.
I'm ready to vote. I'd like to move the previous question.
All right, the only person left is Mr. Holden for a second time. You want to go to the previous question, or you? Okay.
May I have 10 seconds, Mr. Pacheco?
Okay, here we go. Set a 10-second clock. I
All
want
right.
to see this.
I'm just saying, even though this district was vacant in the tent for about 8-9 months, this special election was concurrent with the regular election, and that's why they were able to appoint me. Same as this election.
Okay.
And that was vacant much
All
more
right.
time.
Okay, actually, I think it wasn't a special election.
No, it was the
but doesn't
regular
matter.
election, but it
It was
doesn't
the
matter.
regular election,
It's an
but once it's
election
done,
is
we
an
made an
election.
appointment.
Correct.
Okay.
It's
now-
complex.
All right, we are now ready to vote. Now, let me just say what I think we've got here. The first motion was Mr. Hernandez's motion to make an immediate appointment to the 13th, which Ms. Chick amended, I'm assuming it's a friendly amendment, to specifically recommend appointing Sharon DeLugach as the immediate appointment to the 13th, okay? We're going to vote on that one first because Mr. Savornich was very careful to say he does not want to offer his as a substitute motion. So this is, we are mixing 5s and 6s here, but just don't pay any attention to that. So the first vote is, a yes vote is to appoint Sharon, we're just talking about the 13th, which is really, this is a variation of item 6 here. So the first motion is to appoint Sharon DeLugach to the 13th. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 6 noes.
All right, that was not approved. Yes, sir. Point of order. What is your point of order?
Attorney has drafted up the formal motion that I made verbally, and so I would like to have the clerk circulate that so everybody has it of what the context of the
Okay.
motion was. And I...
There goes the clerk.
Well, you can get up and do. All right.
Apparently.
The motion
was to the council reassert its position to appoint the victor of the election to
whenever there is one.
whenever there is one, to the 13th council district seat.
Okay, now everybody signed up to speak again, but we already called the previous question here, guys, so I'm going to give you a second to have the written copy in front of you, and we're going to vote on this one. which is also specific to the 13th Council District vacancy that exists today. And then we're going to vote on item 5, which is a report that includes a bunch of other stuff for, which is how we, more generically, how we would handle these
Yeah,
as they come up in the
but
future.
my-
I think that is clearly an issue that's going to require some more work.
Right. So, but item 5, Madam Chair, just for clarity, also recommends...
Mr. Hernandez for clarification.
Does add for an appointment to the position.
I'm sorry?
The committee recommendation did recommend an appointment to the position.
The committee recommendation, as I recall, recommended that we not call a special election and therefore that the seat be filled by appointment.
Right, so that would
But
be...
it carefully avoided the specific question
Of who?
of, no, not only of who, but of when. And indeed, the motion, the report addresses, because I raised all these questions in committee, the more, remember, this was a generic motion. The question of how one might open the possibility of an appointment in the future to
Right.
future vacancies to anybody who was interested, and how the community involved might be able to review all those
Right,
people.
and that clarifies my position. I just want to make sure it didn't, that it was different from the current motion that we're voting before us at this time.
Yes,
and
it is different from the current motion.
Point of information on
Yes,
the
sir.
motion. It reads that elected to the council from the 13th district is known. If I recall recent elections, I think Mr. Holden's election was 49.87% in the primary, and I think Mr. Holden argued that the results were known after the primary. So does that qualify if we get to that percentage
No.
point? Would
No.
that be
We will,
sufficient?
we will hear from,
I don't-
from the city attorney. Hold
Oh,
on. I'm gonna get
certified.
you an answer.
Okay, well, could we put that in the motion if that's intended?
Well,
Because,
let's get it
I mean, I
clarified.
just know Mr. Holden
Okay,
would want to
let's-
have that person
Yes, I
appointed if
know,
they
but
got to 49.87,
let's get the,
right,
look, we
Mr. Holden?
closed debate on your motion, so stop. Let's get the answer to your question.
In order for someone to be elected to the council, that person needs to get a majority of the votes cast. It is very possible that on election night, or the day after, we'll know who received the majority, and the purpose of the language is so that the council could then appoint that person. The clerk does not certify the results for 2 weeks.
So you didn't, so you drafted it so that you don't have to wait the 2 weeks?
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, I hope that helps. All right, open the roll on Mr. Yes. We closed debate, Ms. Walters.
I'm rise to a point of information, please.
All right. What's your point?
Of the city attorney. You indicated that a person must win a majority of all votes cast on the date of election, that the election is held. It's my understanding that it's not a majority of all votes cast, but rather 50% plus one vote. 49% could be a majority of all votes cast, but...
No, it would be a percentage. No, it wouldn't. A majority is defined in the election code.
A majority is defined as 50% plus one.
Okay.
A plurality is the person who did not receive a majority, but who received the most votes. We're talking about needing a majority, that is 50% plus one, in order to be elected.
Great, just needed to have that clarified.
Okay. We ready? Open the roll on Mr. Savornich's motion, which is specific to the 13th Council District at this point in history.
I'm asking for a no vote.
Okay, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
That was approved. Forthwith on that. Okay. Now, don't go away, guys, because we still have item 5. Okay, item 5 is the committee report.
Right.
Okay? I don't know if anybody has, just, all right, open the roll on the committee report.
Asking for an aye vote.
Close the roll.
The committee report says they
The
like you.
report basically indicates that there's 2 options. One was immediate appointment, one was the alternative the council just finished, and then also a process of...
No, it's a generic motion, Nate. It
Right.
refers to council
And then-
vacancies, discusses council.
And a process that the council in the future would use to look at future appointments if they did
And
appoint.
it gives the council it still requires the council to make a decision each time a vacancy comes up, which way to go based on the timing and everything else in the world. Okay? Open the roll on item 5, the committee report. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That's approved. And now, forthwith on item 4, please. And that brings us to...
There was a motion that was put on the desk by Mr. Padilla, but I did not hear a second. That was all future instances. The council go on record that the policy is to call for a special election.
Yeah, but if we're going to wind up, under the committee report we just adopted, we're going to wind up having to make that determination each time anyway, okay? Yeah. Okay, item
That brings you to item number
9, called special by
council.
Mr. Padilla.
We on?
Go, yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise, council members, not because this is a controversial item, but because I think this is something we can all support, but this is really a landmark step in the city of Los Angeles. What the city of Los Angeles has done through its various departments, through its various initiatives, as we, I believe, all are aware of piecemeal, is laid out fiber all over the city. The Department of Water and Power, probably more than anybody else, has been aggressively deploying a fiber optic network infrastructure throughout the city. And other fiber optic networks have been deployed, whether it was through the Pacific Pipeline Project, the effort to connect police stations, as part of agreements for asset swapping with cable companies and other technology and telecommunication companies, and on and on and on. And so what we're doing is building our infrastructure, a fiber optic infrastructure for the city of Los Angeles, to meet not only our needs for today when it comes to communication and information and data services, but well into the city's future for many, many years to come. In the meantime, because we have a lot of excess and surplus fiber, what it presents for us, colleagues, is an opportunity for today to have a short-term, a temporary revenue stream to the city of Los Angeles by what we call leasing out the dark fibers, the fibers that we're not currently using. It's a win-win partnership for the city. It means additional revenues in the short term. For the private sector, it means that they're able to provide services and features to consumers who are our constituents in a more expeditious and cost-efficient manner. It's landmark in the city of Los Angeles because it's the first time we do this, particularly at this magnitude, and I think it may be a sign of things to come. As we know, technology is changing. It's providing for these opportunities, not just for putting computers in classrooms or to save the city a little bit of money when we have an internal system, but for true public-private partnerships in and around the city of Los Angeles. That's what's at stake here, and it's only scratching the surface on what the opportunities will be on how to utilize this well-developed and growing fiber optic infrastructure, and I do ask for your support.
Thank you. It was my mistake. We actually do have somebody who wishes to be heard on this before Ms. Chick, a public hearing. So I'm sorry. I should have done this before Mr. Padilla spoke as well. Mr. Naro, are you still here? Victor Naro? There you are. I can't see you very well with the podium in the way. This is on item 13. I'm sorry. Well, no wonder I'm having a hard time here. Excuse me. All right, Ms. Chick, it's your turn. I'm thinking of lunch. That's my problem. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I rise in support and couldn't agree more with Mr. Padilla about the win-win partnership. I introduced a motion back in January of 2000, realizing that we had this fiber optic network and asking the city at a minimum to take a look at evaluating the marketplace for leasing these dark fibers and to see how we could share with the private sector. So I'm thrilled that Mr. Padilla is moving forward today with the very first lease option with the private sector, and I couldn't agree more that bringing almost $1 million, $950,000 into the city coffers is not only sound fiscal policy, but it's smart government. I think we're going to have a unanimous vote on this one.
Let us hope. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Bingo, we have a unanimous vote. Okay, that's approved.
Item number 10, called
item
special,
10,
Councilmember Savornik.
I got that one, thank you. I'm back on track here.
Madam President, item 9 forthwith, please.
Forthwith on item 9. Mr. Savornik, you called item 10 special?
Just so we could vote on it separately.
Oh, I see. Okay, Ms. Mizakowski.
like to ask, actually, that we consider item 10 and item 13 together. They both deal with Special Order 40. And I believe on item 13, we don't yet have a report from the Commission. The Commission had deferred reporting to the Council per our request until they had heard themselves from the Special Independent Panel, the Rampart Independent Review Panel. And I think Mr. Druyan is here. And they did, members of the council, I think each copy was of their Special Order 40 report was delivered to each members of the council this week, or actually last week. There was supposed to have been a report to the commission, and the commission declined to have a report presented. So I'm very happy to see Mr. Druyan here today to present it to us. And it actually relates to the items. I'm sure that Mr. Hernandez will want to speak to item 13, because Mr. Hernandez, seeing this report, looked at the 6 recommendations, thought that they were very worthwhile and meritorious, and his motion on item 13 is asked the Police Commission to adopt the specific recommendations. But I think it would be appropriate to hear from Mr. Druyan at this time and his counsel on what they found, what they did in reporting, as the Commission had asked, on the policy Special Order 40, how it is utilized, implemented, and other things that they found in their report.
All right, before you do that, let's get clear. If we're going to consider items 9 and 13 together.
10 and 13.
10 and 13. 10 and 13 together, then I do want to give Mr. Naro a chance to be heard with respect to item 13. And Mr. Naro, I'm going to give you the choice. You want to wait till the staff reports, or you want to go now? Sorry? Okay. All right. I always try to make up for my mistakes here. All right, so we will now hear from the staff. Go ahead.
Thank you. With me is Rachel Heald from Bird Morella Boxer Wolpert Law Firm, who did a lot of the work on our special report on Special Order 40. Special Order 40 is the policies of the Los Angeles Police Department with respect to the handling of matters involving undocumented aliens. The policy, which was originally promulgated by Chief Darrell Gates, attempts to accommodate the needs of Los Angeles Police Department's law enforcement needs, protect the rights of the immigrant community, and still enable the department to provide appropriate assistance to the Immigration and Naturalization Service. We found that it was a reasonable accommodation by the department to meet all of those different needs. We also found, however, that there are problems with respect to the way in which the policy is set forth in the Los Angeles Police Department manual, that there are inadequate guidance and training for officers. Former officer Rafael Perez alleged that there were widespread abuses of Special Order 40, both the policies set forth in Special Order 40 and also the rights of the immigrant community. We were not able to corroborate Officer Perez's specific allegations, but we did learn from the course of our investigation that the potential for abuses was there. There were interactions between the Los Angeles Police Department and the Immigration and Naturalization Service that were unknown to the captains and the supervisors in Rampart, that were not documented, and for which there were no records. So certainly there's potential for abuses. We recommend that the department provide tighter controls, revise the manual to provide greater guidance to officers as to what the policy is, document contacts, get approvals for contacts with Immigration and Naturalization Service. We also learned about some problems with respect to the way in which they document complaints, and I want to ask Rachel Heald to address that.
Particularly troubling in our investigation that the LAPD said it would be virtually impossible to provide us with copies or records of citizen complaints of Special Order 40 violations if those violations had not been, if those complaints were not sustained. No complaints of Special Order 40 violations have ever been sustained, apparently, and so therefore we weren't able to obtain any records of citizen complaints. This makes audits impossible, and it indicates that there is no oversight of officers who violate Special Order 40. And so we recommend that the complaints be revised and the record keeping in that regard be revised to permit 4 audits and 4 oversight of officers. Also of concern, documentation of officer contacts with the INS is either virtually non-existent or the method of retaining such documents is woefully inadequate. When we asked for records reflecting such contacts in the Rampart area over the last 5 or 6 years, we were given 11 documents. Based upon former Officer Perez's testimony and interviews with the INS, there were a significantly greater number of contacts than that. So therefore, we recommend that the department needs to maintain records of its contacts with the INS, and we specify how those records should be maintained in our report.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Naro. This is the public hearing on items 10 and 13, so.
Yes, hi, good morning again. My name is Victor Nato from the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. My organization participated heavily in this investigation, and I really do appreciate Rachel taking so much time to meet with us. And we took her to meet with workers at their own homes in the evening so she can talk to them, so they can testify about what experiences they've had relating to Special Order 40. We fully support these recommendations. We're very pleased with them. And now the important thing is the follow-up. I know I've been working with Chief Parks the past couple of years with his office. He's devoted some resources to helping us dealing with how to develop a more humane policy of dealing with day laborers and street vendors. And we're willing to continue working with them, especially with these recommendations. We're willing to devote resources to work with the city to make sure that these recommendations go forward. One thing I want to point out, too, there was a community forum that Councilmember Pacheco held last Saturday that I think shows really the concern about the community of issues dealing with immigration and law enforcement. It was raining. I remember that morning because it was a major storm. It was raining hard, but we had hundreds of people show up, immigrants with their own testimonies, with their own stories, and we fully support if other city council members can hold these kind of community forums, because I think it's the best way for people to come to these forums, and then you can listen to the voices of the community. But again, we fully support these recommendations. We're very pleased with them, and we're willing to really work with the city and the chief's office and the police commission to make sure that we implement these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that closes the public hearing, and here we go. We're up to 5. Mr. Hernandez.
Madam Chair, I heard that the commission declined to hear the report. I just want to make sure I had some understanding. If you could hold my time in that regard.
We have the commission executive director here. He can answer that.
This will be heard on the 27th. Originally, it was going to be heard on the 20th, but we don't have a quorum for next week.
Okay, so it will be heard. That was a concern. Madam Chair, members of the council, this has been an issue for a community. In particular, people talk about Pico Union Westlake since 1992, when basically INS was placed there during the civil unrest. And basically the community felt they were under siege. And it was a disregard for that community. See, a child who worries about his parents coming home from work because they were detained by INS is that same child that has to worry about a criminal breaking into their home. And when you have a community that is reluctant to participate with law enforcement because of fears, it doesn't help us deal with the community as a whole in dealing with the issue of crime. And when we have police officers, and this report clearly details in its investigation that from the police officers' participation, they did not want to participate because of the Rampart allegations. The field officers were reluctant to talk about it. But supervisory personnel denied any contact with INS. They didn't have anything that said they had contact with INS. It was looking at ATF and FBI reports that there was an identified case that, yes, there was contact with INS. But more important, it was interviews with INS that disclosed a whole task force of activity with Rampart Division. Now, I'm kind of explaining that because Special Order 40, and I stood here in front of the chief and commanders, and talked about the procedure of Special Order 40 requiring them to go through the downtown detectives before they reported to INS. And not a single one of them wanted to talk about Special Order 18. And Special Order 18, according to this report, was issued a year after Special Order 40 and has suspended the reporting requirements. Now, I'm kind of mentioning that because the bottom line is, I don't think the department's been real honest with us regarding its activity with INS. The bottom line is, I don't think we've been very honest with the community. And that's why these recommendations are important, as part of us reestablishing our credibility. Because basically, we admit that we had no vehicles to oversee complaints and to oversee the contacts that we were having with INS. And we're not saying we shouldn't have those contacts when appropriate. All we were saying is they should be there, and we should know about it, from the chief down. And when you have a system that allows the police officers to do things, supervisory personnel has no idea what's going on, I think we have a major problem.
Problem, yes. Mr. Pacheco.
Madam President, colleagues, one of the most important roles of law enforcement is to obviously protect our community, and whether people like it or not, the reality is we do have people whose immigration status is not to the level of being the permanent resident or in any way satisfying the legal requirements. And these people deserve the same protection as anyone else. What we need to look at, and I do agree with the recommendations, but if you look and go through an analysis of doing your work as a police officer, the status of the individual you're speaking to, their INS status, their immigration status, has no relevance whatsoever on whether or not that person committed the crime you're investigating, is a witness to the crime you're investigating, in any way is an accomplice to the crime you're investigating. And I think one of the things that we need to do is just let the current mechanism of how our reporting gets done through the arrest report, because I understand that's where the transfer of information happens, is that there's a box that's checked in the arrest report that determines or identifies who's undocumented and who's documented. So beyond that box being checked by some administrator or some jailer, the police officer on the duty should have no reason to go into this area under any circumstances, because we're not the INS, so we're not enforcing immigration laws. That's their job. If you're investigating a crime or you're looking for witnesses of crime, a person's status has no relevance and gives you no direction as to whether or not you're going to find out who committed the crime or who observed the crime. So I don't know how we can get to that place, but I know that one of the things that I'm going to ask for is that we basically prohibit our officers from even entering into this area of inquiry, because once a person's arrested, we have a mechanism to comply with the reporting requests that the federal government provides or demands of us as we accept federal funding. I just don't see a place where we need our officers engaging in this discussion or debate with any individual that they come in contact with. So as we review this report, as it goes through committee, as we talk about what reforms are necessary, I will explore removing that avenue of exchange with our police officers. And I'm sure there are some police officers who would just love to not have to even deal with that, because it reduces their workload also, if they don't even have to think about it. And the only final point I would make is, during our forum on these abuses, one gentleman gave a very compelling story about how his removal from his home caused his son to have a real fear of authority figures, because it made no sense to his son why years later, after an incident, his father would be removed from their home. So there are repercussions to the children, to the way they view authority figures and how they deal with their own conduct. And they basically feel if the rules are not being followed as they perceive them for their parents, then why should they follow the rules
Mr.
themselves?
Pacheco.
So I just wanted to share that with you as one of the repercussions, that we don't take care of following our own rules in our police department.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mizikowski, I want to apologize to you. I thought you had already talked, and so I didn't call you first.
That's fine,
It's your
thank
motion.
you,
Go ahead.
Madam President. I want to, one, commend the Rampart Independent Review Panel for a very, very, although slim in volume, very thorough report. It just really put forward a lot of very common sense issues, but also talked about the dilemma, talked about, one, it reinforced that Special Order 40, when it was originally put forward, made a lot of sense. It was making sense to say that we want people in our community, our public, to feel comfortable to come to LAPD when there are problems, either as victim of crimes, problems in, or issues where they want to be part of the neighborhood and community in solving crimes. They've got to see and know that the police department is going to be there to help create and preserve that fabric of safety in the community. So it basically says Special Order 40 is good. It indicates that there is lack of clarity, lack of understanding. The report is so much a replica of everything else you did, which said it comes down to training, it comes down to education, not only of the police officers, but the public as well, to know that these are the rules, and the keeping of records. As you had the information from the immigrant rights communities, and some officer information, mostly from Officer Perez, but I think there was at least one or two other officers who confirmed that there seemed to be a separation between what the policy was and what was really working. But then that the public had the perception that there had been hundreds of complaints filed and yet there were no records also shows the importance of record keeping. And your recommendation talking about that teams, that the complaint management system look at this complaint, track it, so that we do have a record-keeping capability, is in keeping with what we are now doing with teams, where we have to have all complaints able to be recorded, able to be pulled out and looked at in terms of their specificity and type. And so I really think that your recommendations, as they are embodied by Councilman Hernandez's motion today, is really going on the right track, and hopefully, particularly both in the education and the policy clarifications within the department and the education to the public at large, that this is a place of safety, a place of refuge, a place to turn to when there are issues of crime or other concerns from the member of the community, no matter what their status. That's what the LAPD is going to be standing for. So I really commend you, thank you, and look forward to a council affirming these recommendations.
All right, thank you. Ms. Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted the two of you to address a conflict that I saw in the report. Early on in the report, it indicates that Special Order 40 never made it to the manual, to the training manual of the police department, and that was why people were not trained in it. But then later on, as you went down the report, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what page and what section, but it referred to sections of the manual where this was stated. And I'm wondering if we're talking about two different things here, and it didn't come through to me as I read it, or what's happening here?
Well, Special Order 40 was promulgated by Chief Gates, I believe, in 1979, 1980. And I think it probably at that point was embodied in full in the manual. Over the years, certain portions of what Chief Gates wrote have been removed from the manual, so that there are only two sections that, from what was originally Special Order 40, that are in the manual. And they are in Volume 1, Section 390, and Volume 4, Section 264.50. All of the provisions of Special Order 40 that related to documenting the alien status of an individual who was arrested and transmitting that information over to INS have been dropped over the years. So I did not see earlier versions of the manual. I assume that Special Order 40 was pretty much in the earlier versions of the manual, but now
can you explain the statement that's made early on in the report that it was never in the manual?
I didn't recall us saying that it was never in the manual.
You said the word training manual. Are you perhaps thinking of, we did say that we don't
Whatever
believe
manual to which you're referring in the report.
Well, I don't think there is anything in the training of the LAPD officers that is specific with respect to Special Order 40. Maybe that's what we're talking about. And the LAPD manual, which is the operations manual, only contains certain portions of the original order that was issued by Chief Gates.
All I'm asking for is a clarification of your language in the report. And if you have a copy that I can look at, I can point you to the exact place.
We handed one up to the clerk, and I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure where you are in the report.
Thank you.
Well, do you want to do that now, or shall I call on you again when you've
Yes, if
found
you'll
it?
hold my time, I'll look at it.
I'll just call on you again. Okay, Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you, Madam President. In the material, one recommendation is that a bureau chief have to approve when an INS agent is allowed to work out of a police division. Under what possible circumstances would we as a city want to sanction an INS official working out of a police division?
Well, I think that if you had a specific task force that was set up in which the INS was going to focus on immigration violations and really mostly, I think, share information, identify individuals who were considered to be dangerous in our community, you might have them set up there. But I think this is even broader than that. Even if you said you don't want to have any kind of a joint task forces, I think our recommendation is if you're going to have INS agents in a station getting information, for example, from police officers, that ought to be authorized by higher-ups in the department. I think there are legitimate instances in which INS agents can go to the department, can go to a police station and ask for information. But if they're going to do that, what we were saying is you need to have high-level supervision.
Yeah, because I guess
approval.
Let me make a statement and then ask you to elaborate. The concern obviously is that if the community in general, especially if the division is located in a community where there are a number of undocumented people, has any perception that INS is present at the station, it is going to erode whatever public confidence is created by education efforts about what Special Order 40 means. Even a couple instances, word gets around and it completely undermines that effort. I'm very concerned about the potential presence of INS under any circumstances. Most information gathering, one would assume, could be performed either by computer, by correspondence, or off-site. And I understand, Rick, the point you're making, that there may be some very narrow instances in which there are exceptions to what I've just said. But hear what I'm saying, that once people hear that INS has been there, I think you've really gone a long way to contradict the strong message we're trying to send, even if the bureau chief says it's okay, perhaps especially if the bureau chief says it's okay. Are there any suggestions that would make me less concerned about that?
Well, I think, first of all, what you have here in Special Order 40 is an attempt to accommodate various different interests.
Of course.
And one of the interests, I think, is to enable the Los Angeles Police Department in the appropriate circumstances to be able to provide information to the INS, particularly when we're dealing with individuals who are engaged in criminal activity. And I think the most important thing is, from a management operational standpoint, is to make sure there are appropriate controls. And that means high-level approval. I think you can make reasonable judgments that, for example, as you're suggesting, that the policy should say if there's going to be cooperation, it shouldn't be done out of a community police station. I think, and it should be done through off-site or through telephonic communications and computer. I do think, though, if you had a very specifically tailored task force which identified the roles that were going to be played by Los Angeles Police Department and
I got it. Rick, tell me my time's up. Let me just make a suggestion.
Okay.
We're not the final arbiters of this. It has to go to the commission for review, and they oversee the department. I understand that. I would suggest with regard to this provision that it be worded in less positive terms, that you say something like, no INS official should be allowed to work out of a community police station unless okayed in the following manner, under the following specific circumstances only. So it may be made very clear and very narrow. My other question, which you can ask when I'll sit down, is, are there the resources and the capacity within the department to implement these recommendations regarding training, information gathering, and dissemination?
And let me say, I think the first issue as to the formulation of that, I think goes right to a policy question that ultimately should be decided by the police commission. We were less concerned about formulating a policy once we concluded that Special Order 40 was a reasonable accommodation. The specifics of that policy should be, I think, ultimately formulated by the police commission and addressed maybe just as the way you say it. So I think that issue should go back to the police commission. Our recommendations really were trying to focus more on operational issues, fix the manual, tighten up the controls and the like. The department has got a lot of demands on its resources these days. I do not think that our recommendations require significant resources. They require really a drafting of a more fulsome Special Order 40 with adequate guidelines on addressing the policy question of what kinds of contacts are appropriate at the station, and then some training. And then ultimately also we're going to have to, through Teams 2, they'll be able to track some of this, and hopefully we'll have better record of complaints. I don't think this recommendation requires a great deal of police resources.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walters, it's your turn once again.
Yes. I would draw your attention to the top of page 5. First line here that says, the sentence beginning with indeed, other than precluding LAPD officers from initiating police action to discover the, quote, the alien status of a person, end quote, and arresting persons for, quote, unquote, illegal entry, there are no procedures, and no is italicized, in the manual that guide officer compliance with the policies of Special Order 40.
Right. If you will look back, starting on page 3.
Where you begin to reference the manual.
Correct. We quote in the paragraph on page 3, the indented paragraph on page 3, and the first full indented paragraph on page 4, that is the sum total of what is in the Los Angeles Police Department manual regarding Special Order 40. If you then look at the next block quote below that on page 4, that was what was originally in Special Order 40 as promulgated by Chief Gates, but is no longer in the manual. So when you look at the first two indented paragraphs, there are no procedures as to how to comply with Special Order 40.
If these were put in the manual, how did they get out? They were put in by another chief. How did they get out?
Council Member Walters, that is a very good question. We found one Special Order number 18, which modified slightly the full indented paragraph on page 4 that says alien arrest information. But we could not find from LAPD records how the rest of that was deleted from the LAPD manual. I personally looked at the history regarding the documentary history regarding the promulgation of Special Order 40 and the changes, and we found no documentation as to how it went from Special Order 40 to the current version, other than Special Order 18, which had a very slight modification. So the answer is we couldn't find it out from their records.
And let that be a lesson to us all. All right. Now, we have nobody else at the moment asking to speak. So, and we do have both items before us. So, Cindy, on item 10.
We haven't yet had a report from the commission, but I would move that we approve item 13.
Oh, let's, so
Item
with
number
that,
10, do you wish to continue that matter?
well, that's the question. Do we continue it? Do we note and file it? What do we do
We'll
here?
continue it as the
Okay.
commission reports back.
No, let's continue item 10 until we get a report from
Until
the
we get
commission.
reports. Refer
But-
item 10 to the Public Safety Committee.
So if the commission is hearing it on 2/27, then maybe March
Well,
2nd?
actually, that's probably the answer. Just refer
Refer
item
it to
10 to
Public
the Public
Safety.
Safety Committee, and then they can tell us when they have a report to bring back. Okay, that's item 10. Item 13. You may remember we had a public hearing on this, well, what seems like hours ago. Okay, item 13 is before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
All right, item 13 is approved. Which brings us to
Item number 16, called special.
called
Councilman
special by
Holden.
Mr. Holden.
Ms. Mr. I think you understand the consideration here.
Yes.
And would you just explain the action going to take place?
Okay, Ms.
This
Mizikowski.
this is a motion that I am recommending, asking the city attorney to look at a number of issues and bring back recommendations to the council to implement some more effective changes to the issue of illegal grading that goes on, particularly in a lot of our hillside communities, or inconsistency between what goes on and a permit or plan that was issued and the real processing. So it recommends a number of things. Mr. Holden has pointed out that 2 of the items dealing with seeking assistance from Sacramento in some change in legislation to allow us for prosecution of illegal grading, particularly when it reaches a certain threshold of safety issues, that we be allowed to prosecute it as a felony. And since that does look to change state legislative matters, that should be referred to IGR, as well as item number 5 on the recommendation, which asks that we work with the contracting state licensing board, which my motion would ask that ultimately if a contractor is found to commit illegal grading after a certain number of times, that license be revoked. So since that too deals with some state legislation that would be necessary by policy or legislative intent, I would ask that both those items be referred to IGR, but the rest be referred to the city attorney for bringing back the recommendations as to how we can strengthen and improve our enforcement mechanism in the illegal grading.
Okay, in that case, if I don't hear any objection, and I haven't heard one yet, item 16 will be referred to the IGR committee.
No.
In part. Some to the city attorney and the others relating to IGR.
Okay. Okay, that brings us, I believe, to the closed session.
Yes, item number 19, closed session. Did you wish to hear public comment at this time?
Yes, we do. While we are clearing the room, we will hear public comment and hear from, I have Mr. Robinson and Wendy Elise Hubbard. I'm sorry, I can't read the last name, but you'll know who you are. Richard, you're up first.
Madam President, members, anyone who has driven at 100 miles per hour down the Autobahn, visited the Rastkellers of Heidelberg, driven under the Arc de Triomphe, seen the Moulin Rouge on Place Pigalle, touched the Eiffel Tower, walked down the Champs-Élysées, or eaten in a fine Parisian restaurant. Ruth, she or he knows the allure and beauty of Europe. However, America is about to enter in a new age. Europe's about to get ugly. Intense competition with the European community, the common market, and the EU, the European unit, the Eurodollar. Great Britain will join the common market in 2 years, forging enormous pressure upon the United States to compete, particularly vis-a-vis Germany and the European...
Mr. Robinson, focus it on the city of Los Angeles, if you would,
I'm getting to
please.
that. As soon as I get this
Well,
part
get
about...
there soon.
As soon as I get this part about Germany and Japan getting ready to kick our, well, you know, economic, you know. Mayor Reardon wants to provide the city, like the charter reform process was a boon for the city of The charter reform process was a boon for the city of Los Angeles. So will tax reform be. The tax reform Mayor Reardon wants to provide the city, like the reform of the city charter, will place the city in a position to help President Bush enact his $1.6 trillion economic stimulus plan, including the abolition of the estate tax. By stimulating investment in the city's business infrastructure, the Alameda Corridor and IST ensure that the city will be progressive. The repair and improvement of the city's physical infrastructure, Ruth, thus will not be problematic. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hubbard Price? She here? All right, she doesn't seem to be here. In that case, that closes the public comment period. Before we start the executive session, Mr. Deaton has suggested that we ask the Department of Water and Power for a report on, he's going to explain to me what, and how we get this in without violating the Brown Act.
Well, the need to arise as a result of the fact that this morning, and...
Oh, we just made a Rule 23 out of it, is
yeah,
that?
we'll just make a Rule 23. We've done that. Then
we have to vote on the findings before so you can finish
This
that
is-
sentence you started.
In newspapers this morning, there was indication that the Department of Water and Power in selling power to the state was price gouging and at extremely high prices, and I think that needs some discussion to not necessarily take action on, but at least let the council know what the situation is.
Well, it was obviously for the purpose of giving it away to the school district, as Mr. Reardon proposed yesterday, but let us open the roll on the findings first. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, the findings are before us, and we will move now to a report. Mr. Gavey.
Good morning. Again, you can read the newspaper articles that we're gouging. That is not quite precise. There are a lot of factors that are involved. We're not giving away the power to the loss of our ratepayers, but we're certainly not gouging. And I'd like to turn over to Henry Martinez, the head of the power system, to present the details on what we're doing.
Good afternoon. I just want to report basically our position in what's happened here over the last few days in the state of California, particularly with our sales to the CWR. First of all, I just want to state that as a matter of policy, the Department of Water and Power provides always lowest cost generation to the citizens of Los Angeles first. Therefore, we only offer to the state for sale that power that is not needed by our system, and furthermore, typically is our more expensive power. Since early last year, knowing that the power crisis was in California, we had a policy established of selling and providing access to our excess capacity to California first. If California did not need it, then we offered it out of state. And in fact, during the stage 1, 2, and 3 alerts that we encountered this last several months, declared by the system operator, we continue to sell within the state during those times. Now, the pricing methodology we use in the department to set our wholesale trading always been cost-based plus a margin on top of that for the sales of California, in California, and then a market-based for sales outside of California. That is, when we sell in California, we set prices, like I mentioned before, on our cost of production plus a small margin on top of that. And then outside of California, we charge higher, which is mostly market-based. For the last few months, we have sold energy to the state every day with an average price between $200 to $450 per megawatt hour. We have made sales to the state a week in advance, a day in advance, an hour in advance, and within a few hours of the sales. So in essence, our dynamics and the type of sales that we make, they're quite a variety of products and different durations. Nothing in the methodology that we use for pricing has changed. When the natural gas prices rise in the spot market, our bids to the state increase in a likely amount. We do not sell energy to the state at prices where DWP is taking a loss. Furthermore, we base our bids on cost. So in addition to natural gas prices, the other important factors that we use in our pricing policy for energy is, first of all, the cost of purchasing emission credits. The emission credits have been very high, and it's a necessary requirement for our operations to maintaining our permits. Secondly, we also look at the transmission tariffs. We have to transmit that power somewhere in the system, and there's a cost to that. We also have to consider and include the cost of starting up a unit. This is a startup cost, and it's a sunk cost, basically, when the unit's committed. And the last item that we look at is the cost of labor and maintenance for the unit. So those are the primary factors that we use in the pricing policy and the pricing of our product to the state and also out of state. Now, the natural gas prices have increased significantly over the last week, and we've seen the natural gas prices on the spot market quadruple from where we were earlier in the week, in last week. As a result, some of our bids to the state have nearly quadrupled.
I just think it's important that you know that when the state asked for the power at the last minute, the cost in the instance that was in the newspapers was cost of a power over $1,000 a megawatt. The only power that we can provide like that is Castaic. To get it up the hill so it can come back down and produce electricity, someplace between $900 and $1,000 of gas on the spot market when you have to pay penalties. We are not gouging the state of California. We are doing our very best to provide the power at virtually cost. And I think that's the only thing. We just wanted to be sure you had that message quickly and back.
And I summarize this as saying, basically, the power we have available when they call us and say, quick, send us power, is the expensive kind to produce. So in order to cover our costs, to not shortchange our ratepayers, we have to charge the state at least what it costs us to produce.
That's right.
Okay. Mr. Savornich and Mr. Holden both wish to be heard. Mr. Savornich is first.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the council. I think this would also be a good opportunity because I believe this council, it might be 2-3 weeks ago, maybe even more now, established a policy that we wanted to continue to be good citizens of the state of California and continue to provide power to the grid because of other areas in the state having to suffer from rolling blackouts and other inconveniences because of the status of the other private sector energy providers in the state, and that we would continue to do so. However, we also requested as a body that we get a status report in regards to the amount of monies that are now presently owed the city of Los Angeles in regard to this power being purchased on credit. The majority, if not the single purchaser of this power from the state being Southern California Edison, which we all know its financial stability is doubtful and changes day to day. So is the department at this time prepared to inform the council of what the tab is to date, what efforts are being made to ensure that the city of Los Angeles gets paid for the energy that we have provided to the state, because I know legislation has been enacted to date and other is being considered in the form of issuing a bond, and I know that the legislature appropriated $400 million at one time to secure future power prices, but we have not heard to date in regards to the past power sales, which I believe could be significant to the city of Los Angeles, even though I know very well we've also been paid for quite a lot of the power that we have provided. So could you enlighten us just quickly in regards to those few items? And then also, have we entered into, the final question, have we entered into any type of long-term contracts with the gas company in regards to their product? Because I know that when we did that years ago in regards to coal, that we had entered into a long-term agreement thinking that we had the best price at coal over a long period of time, and it turned out that the price went through the floor and we were paying for coal at prices that were exorbitant and had to renegotiate those contracts. So give us an update on what's owed and where we are and the status of long-term contracts, and if that is indeed beneficial.
All right, thank you. All right, you'll answer the question. We've picked up another speaker. We're going to hear also from Mr. Holden and Mr. Pacheco, but you guys first.
Okay, well, let me address first of all the outstanding amount. We have $186 million outstanding on monies that are owned by the California Exchange, Independent System Operator, and the Power Exchange. Those $186 million that are outstanding currently, we have been working with our city attorneys to follow and prepare documents going back to the Cal PX and also the ISO to continual demand payment and making sure that we are there constantly in front of the collection process. We have not initiated any aggressive action at this point. We are also making the request known in the state level with the Assembly and the Senate to establish some language and legislation to guarantee that we are and we will be paid. So in essence, that's the monies that are currently outstanding from those two agencies or organizations at the state level. Since January of this year, we shifted all of our sales to the Department of Water Resources. And in essence, those sales have been backed by a letter of credit of $104 million. All of our sales since, like I said, mid-January have been gone in that direction. We just received a payment from the state for $54 million yesterday that in essence we have received and leaves a balance of the letter of credit at this point. We're currently in discussions about continue to make sales to the Department of Water Resources, particularly based on the fact we were told that letter of credits would not be issued any longer. So we're concerned that financially we are maybe on unsure grounds at this point, but we're discussing at the highest levels some kind of guarantee that the city will be paid for the additional power that we're providing. But from that perspective, we have in essence received and have secured at least $104 million from the state of California. The third item, gas prices. We have not entered into any long-term contracts for gas at this point. Mr. Freeman, myself, and Mr. Vasquez from our CFO have gone to Houston, and we met with several companies to explore and discuss opportunities for gas prices. We felt that it's a lot better at this point to go back to the producers, deal with them on a direct basis, extract a deal that we can strike at this point where, in essence, we stabilize the gas prices. And before we enter into any kind of long-term agreements of any kind, we need to, in essence, talk to our commission and then also make you aware of what our plans are.
Mr. Deaton.
I would, in an effort not to lose a quorum on item 19, I would recommend that this item just be continued until Tuesday. If there want to be further discussion, then we can act on 19. I don't think anything is just...
I knew you'd see it my way eventually.
And I think that would be appropriate at this time if the council...
Well, the two people who've asked to be heard are Mr. Holden and Mr. Pacheco. If it's agreeable to you guys, since Mr. Pacheco is the one who has to leave, he probably will agree to that. What we want to do, we'll trail this item to Tuesday and see what happens, and we will then finally, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So what else is new? All right, we're going to go into closed session. We have one item. With any luck, it will not take a great deal of time. If you are not involved in the closed session, goodbye, have a nice weekend. And if you are involved in the closed session, don't leave yet. And, I'm sorry, what? Let's clear the desk.
Clear the
while we're
desk.
doing this,
Motions
yes.
for posting and referral.
Without objection, they are posted and referred.
Request from council attendance. Councilmember Savornich requests to be excused on Wednesday, February 28th. I'll leave at 11:30. This meets policy for city business.
Well, hallelujah, someone that meets policy. That's a unanimous approval.
Councilmember Chick requests to be excused on February 21st to arrive at 10:30, and February 28th to leave at 12:15. March 21st, be excused for city business. A motion is required.
All right, Mr. Savornich moves, Mr. Fewer seconds, unanimous vote.
Councilmember Savornich requests to be excused on March 20th, 21st, 23rd, 27th, 28th for city business. Meets policy.
All right, meets policy, it's approved.
The desk is clear for item 19.
Somehow I have a feeling you're going somewhere more exotic, but, all right, the desk is now clear and we are not quite, the room is not quite clear. Okay. Please rise for adjourning motions. First, on behalf of Council President Ferraro, I'd like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Pearl Hilgemeyer, who was an active member and avid fundraiser for the Hope Lutheran Church for over 50 years. Mr. Hernandez.
Madam Chair, members of the council, I ask that we adjourn in the name of Jose Quinones. He passed away a week ago yesterday. I just found out yesterday. He was the father of Rose Cano, and she is the executive director of Plaza La Raza, the Cultural Center. And I ask that we adjourn in his name at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Holden.
Madam President, members, sad to announce that we should adjourn in memory of Dr. Kathleen Green Moore. Dr. Moore passed away this week on Tuesday, 13th, just young, 66. Throughout the San Gabriel Valley, she was well known as an outstanding educator. Dr. Moore was the president and owner of the Pasadena Adult Development Center. She was also a longtime member of the Prim AME Church in Pomona. Her husband, Donald Moore Sr., passed away in 1995. Dr. Moore leaves behind two loving, devoted children, Gwendolyn Moore, Donald Leslie Moore Jr. And I might add, Madam President, members, that I had the privilege and pleasure of knowing Donald Moore and his wife, Kathleen Moore, back in New Jersey. He was they both migrated to California, and we're going to miss him.
Anybody else? Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. Request that we adjourn in memory of Dolores Gomez, who was the mother of George Ruelas, who was very active in the city of San Fernando in the Northeast Valley and president of the San Fernando Democratic Club. But Dolores Gomez was 70 years old, was born in El Paso, Texas, but moved to Delano early and became a longtime supporter and activist with the United Farm Workers. She had been a resident of the city of San Fernando for 47 years. From 1953 to 1977, she was also an active member of Mary Immaculate Church in Pacoima. From 1977 to her passing, she was an active member of St. Didacus Catholic Church in Sylmar. She worked for 24 years for the county as a social worker with the Department of Social Services and leaves behind 5 children and many grandchildren.
Thank you. Mr. Savornik.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the council. I'm sure that you would like to join me in adjourning in memory of Sean Robert, who passed away 2 days ago on Valentine's Day, February 14th. He was a resident of Playa del Rey, worked as an associate for Nadell Architects. He is survived by his wife, Bernadette, son Jonathan, daughter Elise, and his mother-in-law, Ozzie Gonzak, president of the Board of Housing Authority Commissioners.
Thank you.
I'd
Walters?
like to be a seconder on that one, please.
Okay, I think we're ready. Thank you. We are adjourned. Have a nice weekend. See you Tuesday at 10 o'clock.